Mother Bear saw a human baby collapsed in the jungle. What she did put. Everyone in tears. Let us know where you're watching from. The morning light struggled to break through the thick canopy of the Amazon rainforest. Droplets of dew clung to emerald leaves, while a symphony of exotic birds filled the humid air. Olivia Bennett clutched her satellite phone tightly, her voice trembling as she reported her 6-month-old son Noah missing for over 5 hours. The research station had been thrown into chaos when one of the local guides, Marco, had taken the baby for what was supposed to be a brief walk around the perimeter. Now, both were gone without a trace. "Please," Olivia sobbed into the phone, her knuckles white from gripping it so hard. "Send everyone you can. The jungle. It's not safe for him. He needs his medication." Her husband, Dr. Thomas Bennett, stood beside her, his face ashen as he stared into the wall of green that had swallowed their child. As a wildlife biologist studying jaguars in the area, he knew better than anyone the dangers lurking in the shadows of this beautiful but merciless place. Miles away from the research station, something stirred in a small clearing. A massive Andean bear, her chocolate-brown fur glistening in patches of sunlight, lifted her head suddenly. Her sensitive ears twitched at a sound that didn't belong to the jungle, a weak, pitiful cry that seemed to come from somewhere beyond the thicket of bamboo. The mother bear, whom local researchers had named Luna, paused in her foraging. Her own cub played nearby, tumbling over fallen logs and practicing its climbing skills. Luna's nostrils flared, catching an unfamiliar scent carried on the gentle breeze. Curiosity overcame caution as she lumbered toward the strange sound, her powerful muscles moving with surprising grace beneath her thick coat. She pushed through the dense vegetation, her cub following hesitantly behind. What Luna discovered made her freeze in her tracks. There, on a bed of crushed ferns and mud, lay a tiny human infant wrapped in a soiled blue blanket. The baby's face was flushed with fever, tiny lips parched and cracked. Beside him lay the motionless form of Marco, the guide, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle beneath him. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead. He had clearly fallen down the steep embankment above, trying to protect the child even as he lost consciousness. The bear approached cautiously, her massive head lowering to investigate. The baby's scent was strange, a mixture of milk, illness, and something artificial. Noah whimpered weakly, his little chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow breaths. His medication for his heart condition was still tucked in Marco's pocket, untouched for hours. Every minute without it pushed him closer to danger. Luna circled the infant, sniffing and watching. Her cub hung back, confused by its mother's interest in this strange creature. In the dense forest around them, danger lurked. The slithering shapes of anacondas, the silent, padded feet of jaguars, and the ever-present threat of the elements themselves. The afternoon rain would come soon, and the temperature would drop rapidly with nightfall. The mother bear stood at a crossroads of instinct and something deeper, something that transcended the boundaries of species. She looked from the helpless human baby to her own cub, and something profound shifted in her gaze. The child's cries grew weaker, more sporadic. Time was running out, and Luna seemed to sense it with every fiber of her being. What happened next would change everything. Luna lowered her massive head toward the baby, her hot breath washing over Noah's tiny form. For a terrible moment the world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with surprising gentleness, the mother bear nudged the infant with her muzzle, turning him slightly to better see his face. Noah's eyes fluttered open briefly, deep blue pools of confusion and pain that somehow locked with the bear's dark gaze. Something passed between them, something ancient and wordless that transcended the barriers of species. In the distance, thunder rumbled. The afternoon storm was approaching faster than usual, dark clouds gathering above the canopy. Luna looked up, sensing the change in pressure. Her cub whimpered, seeking reassurance as the wind began to pick up, shaking the leaves around them. Marco remained unconscious, his breathing shallow but stable. He would not wake soon enough to save the child. Luna made her decision. With painstaking care that belied her enormous strength, the mother bear gently closed her jaws around the baby's blanket, lifting him just enough to free him from the ground without harming him. Noah stirred but didn't cry out, as if somehow understanding the gravity of the moment. The bear's cub watched in confusion, making small distressed sounds at its mother's strange behavior. Luna began moving through the jungle with purpose, her powerful body carving a path through the underbrush while keeping the precious bundle suspended safely above the ground. Her cub scampered to keep up, occasionally casting curious glances at the strange, hairless creature its mother had adopted. The first fat raindrops began to fall, splashing through the canopy and striking leaves with increasing frequency. Back at the research station, chaos had given way to organized desperation. A search party of 12, including local guides, researchers, and 2 medical professionals, had split into 4 groups to comb the jungle. Olivia refused to stay behind, ignoring her husband's pleas as she strapped a medical kit to her back. "I know these parts better than most of the team," she insisted, checking the battery on her headlamp. "Noah needs me, Thomas. I won't sit here wondering if he's—" She couldn't finish the sentence. She wouldn't allow herself to consider the worst. Thomas looked at his wife, remembering how she had spent 3 years in these jungles studying indigenous medicinal plants before they had met. She was right. She was an asset to the search. "We'll find him," he promised, though his voice betrayed his fear. "Just stay close to Raphael and follow his lead." As the rain intensified, Olivia's group, led by Raphael, the station's most experienced guide, discovered signs of passage on a narrow animal trail. Broken twigs and disturbed ground suggested someone had passed through recently, heading downhill toward the river. Marco might have tried to take shelter near the water, Raphael suggested, his weathered face grim with concern. There are caves in the limestone cliffs that could provide protection from predators. What Raphael didn't say, what everyone knew, was that the river was also home to caimans and anacondas. If Marco had fallen or been injured, and the baby was left unprotected near the water's edge, the outcome would be unthinkable. Adding to their terror was the knowledge that flash floods were common in this region during the rainy season. The riverbanks could transform from peaceful shores to raging torrents in minutes. Olivia pushed ahead, her heart pounding with renewed fear. "We need to hurry," she urged, her voice almost lost in the increasing downpour. Meanwhile, Luna continued her careful journey, somehow sensing that the tiny human needed warmth and shelter. The bear seemed to be following an invisible path, moving with surprising swiftness despite her burden. Her destination soon became clear, a small cavern set into a hillside, dry and secluded, where she had sheltered during previous storms. Inside the cave, Luna carefully placed Noah on a bed of dry leaves that covered the floor. The space was snug but not cramped, with enough room for the bear, her cub, and their unexpected charge. Most importantly, it was dry and relatively warm, protected from the elements that now raged outside. The bear's cub sniffed curiously at Noah, then settled close to its mother, watching the strange creature with wary fascination. Noah was growing weaker. His medication should have been administered hours ago, and his little body was struggling to compensate. His breathing became more labored, his movements more lethargic. Luna seemed to sense his distress. She began to lick his face and hands with her rough tongue. an instinctive behavior she would use with her own cub when it was in distress. The gentle grooming seemed to soothe the baby, who quieted under her ministrations. Unknown to Luna, her actions were helping in another way. The slight stimulation kept Noah from slipping too deeply into unconsciousness, while her warm body, now curled protectively around him, combated the chill that had begun to seep into his small frame. At the bottom of the embankment where Marco had fallen, Olivia's group made a heartbreaking discovery. The guide lay motionless on the ground, the rain washing away the blood that had seeped from his head wound. Raphael immediately checked for vital signs. "He's alive," he confirmed, relief evident in his voice. "But where is the child?" Olivia frantically searched the area, her fingers clawing through mud and vegetation. "Noah!" she screamed, her voice raw with desperation. "Noah!" That's when she noticed something that made her blood run cold. Large paw prints, unmistakably those of a bear, circled the area where Marco lay, and there, caught on a thorny bush nearby, was a scrap of blue fabric, torn from Noah's blanket. Olivia fell to her knees, a primal sound of anguish tearing from her throat. Thomas, who had been notified by radio and had rushed to join them, dropped beside her, his face a mask of disbelief and horror. "The tracks lead that way," Raphael said quietly, pointing toward the limestone ridges that housed numerous caves and crevices. "If a bear has taken him—" He didn't need to finish. Everyone knew what finding a predator's den usually meant, but Thomas, through his shock, noticed something odd about the tracks. "These prints," he whispered, studying them with the eye of someone who had tracked animals for years. "They're careful, measured." He looked up, a wild hope kindling in his eyes. The bear wasn't running or dragging anything, it was walking carefully. Olivia clutched the scrap of blanket, trying to process her husband's words. "What are you saying?" "I don't know," Thomas admitted, "but something doesn't fit the pattern of a predator with prey." He stood, new determination hardening his features. "We need to follow these tracks, now." As the search party reorganized, bringing Marco on an improvised stretcher and calling for medical evacuation, something remarkable was happening in Luna's cave. The mother bear had been continuously grooming and warming the baby, her instincts driving her to protect this fragile life. Noah had momentarily rallied, his tiny hand reaching out and grasping a tuft of Luna's fur. The simple gesture seemed to cement something in the bear's behavior, a connection that transcended the natural order. The bear's cub, initially wary, had grown accustomed to the strange scent and sounds of the human infant. It nuzzled closer, providing additional warmth with its small body. The three unlikely companions formed a tableau of unexpected harmony as the storm continued to rage outside. But Noah's condition was deteriorating. Without his medication, his heart was struggling to maintain its rhythm. His breaths grew more shallow, his skin taking on a bluish tinge despite the warmth provided by his unlikely guardians. Luna sensed the change. She became agitated, nudging the baby more frequently, licking his face with greater urgency. When Noah's breathing stuttered, the mother bear let out a low, mournful sound that echoed through the small cavern. It was a sound of distress, of helplessness in the face of something she couldn't fight or fix. That sound, carrying through the rain-soaked jungle, reached the ears of the search party as they struggled up the slippery limestone ridge, following the bear tracks that had remained visible even in the downpour. "Did you hear that?" Olivia stopped, her senses heightened by adrenaline and maternal instinct. The group paused, listening intently. Again, the sound came, a deep, resonant call that contained notes of what could only be described as sorrow. "It's coming from that cave," Raphael pointed to a dark opening about 50 meters up the ridge. "But we need to approach with extreme caution. If there is a bear—" "That's my son up there." Olivia cut him off, already moving forward. Thomas grabbed her arm. "We go together," he said firmly, "with a plan." The team quickly outlined their approach. 2 guides with tranquilizer guns would take point, followed by Thomas and Raphael. Olivia, with the medical kit, would stay just behind them, ready to rush in the moment it was safe. The others would form a perimeter, ready to assist or evacuate as needed. As they neared the cave entrance, the sounds from within changed. The mournful calls had been replaced by softer noises, almost like cooing. The team exchanged puzzled glances. These were not the sounds typically associated with a predator in its den. With weapons raised, the lead guides peered into the darkness of the cave. What they saw left them frozen in disbelief. There, illuminated by the beams of their flashlights, was an enormous Andean bear curled protectively around a tiny human baby. A bear cub snuggled against the infant's other side, creating a living blanket of warm fur. The mother bear looked up, meeting their gaze without aggression, though her body tensed protectively. "Noah!" Olivia's voice broke as she pushed forward, maternal instinct overriding all caution. "Wait!" Thomas hissed, trying to hold her back, but it was too late. Olivia rushed forward into the cave, her only thought reaching her son. The mother bear rose to her full height, an imposing wall of muscle and fur that towered over the petite woman. Everyone behind Olivia froze, weapons trained on the bear, breaths held in collective terror. But instead of attacking, Luna simply stood her ground, positioning herself between the humans and the baby without making any aggressive moves. Her eyes, intelligent and somehow sorrowful, locked with Olivia's. There was a moment of primal understanding between the 2 mothers, a silent communication that transcended species. "Please," Olivia whispered, her voice breaking as she slowly sank to her knees. "He needs help. He's dying without his medicine." As if understanding the desperation in the human mother's voice, Luna shifted slightly to the side, still watchful but no longer blocking access to Noah. The bear's cub remained huddled against the baby, seemingly reluctant to break contact with its unusual companion. Thomas stood rooted in shock, his scientific mind struggling to process what he was witnessing. This behavior defied everything he knew about wild bears. Raphael and the other guides were equally stunned, their weapons still raised, but fingers easing away from triggers as the scene unfolded. Olivia crawled forward slowly, making no sudden movements. When she reached Noah, tears streamed freely down her face. The baby's skin was gray-blue, his breathing dangerously shallow. With trembling hands, she opened the medical kit and prepared the injection that would stabilize his heart condition. "Hold on, sweet boy," she murmured as she administered the medication. "Mommy's here now." Throughout this delicate procedure, Luna watched intently, occasionally sniffing the air as if trying to determine if this intervention was helping or harming the infant she had protected. Her cub remained pressed against Noah, seemingly offering comfort through its warm presence. The minutes that followed were tense and silent, except for the steady drumming of rain outside and Noah's labored breathing. Then, gradually, color began returning to the baby's face. His breathing became less strained, more regular. When his eyes fluttered open and he made a small querulous sound, Olivia broke down completely, gathering him carefully in her arms. "It's a miracle," Raphael whispered, crossing himself. "The bear. She saved him." Thomas finally found the courage to approach, moving slowly and keeping his eyes on Luna. The mother bear watched him warily, but made no threatening moves. When he knelt beside his wife and son, adding his protective embrace around them both, Luna made a soft huffing sound that seemed almost like approval. "We need to get Noah to proper medical care," Thomas said softly. "The helicopter should be arriving for Marco soon. We can have it take Noah, too." Olivia nodded, but her eyes remained fixed on Luna. "She kept him alive," she said in wonder, "when she could have." She couldn't finish the thought. The radio crackled with news that the medical evacuation helicopter was approaching. The sound startled Luna's cub, who scrambled behind its mother. Luna herself tensed, her powerful muscles bunching beneath her fur as her instincts warned of the strange, loud object approaching from above. "We need to go," Raphael urged, glancing nervously at the increasingly agitated bear. Now, while she's still calm. As the group began to retreat from the cave, Olivia paused, still cradling Noah. She turned back toward Luna, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said simply, knowing the words were inadequate, but unable to express the depth of her gratitude any other way. Luna watched them go, her dark eyes following the tiny bundle in Olivia's arms. Just before they disappeared from view, the mother bear made a soft keening sound, almost like a farewell. The helicopter arrived within minutes, touching down in a small clearing that the team had marked with emergency flares. Marco was loaded first, his condition stable but still unconscious. Then Olivia boarded with Noah, the medical team immediately taking over his care, attaching monitors and oxygen. Thomas hesitated before boarding, his gaze drawn back toward the limestone ridge where Luna's cave was barely visible through the rain. "What are you thinking?" Raphael asked, noticing his distraction. "That everything I thought I knew about these animals might be wrong," Thomas replied quietly. "The level of empathy, the decision-making, it's unprecedented." As the helicopter lifted off, carrying the injured and reunited family to safety, no one noticed a shape at the mouth of the distant cave, the silhouette of a mother bear and her cub, watching the strange flying object disappear into the stormy sky. 3 days later, Noah had fully recovered in the regional hospital. His medication schedule had been adjusted, and doctors were optimistic about his long-term prognosis. Marco had regained consciousness, though he had no memory of his fall or what happened afterward. He was devastated by his perceived failure to protect the child in his care, but the Bennetts assured him repeatedly that they blamed him for nothing. As the family prepared to return to the research station to collect their belongings before flying home, Thomas was unusually quiet. Olivia found him staring out the hospital window, lost in thought. "What's troubling you?" she asked, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I can't stop thinking about Luna," he admitted. "What she did goes against everything in the scientific literature about bear behavior. It's as if she recognized Noah as a baby, as someone who needed protection, despite him being from a different species." Olivia nodded. "I've been thinking the same thing, and about what happens now." "What do you mean?" "The locals know what happened. Word has spread. Luna is being called a miracle bear, a blessed creature. But you know what that kind of attention can mean for wild animals." Thomas's face darkened. "Poachers, tourists, disruption of her habitat. We have to protect her," Olivia said firmly. "She saved our son. We owe her that much." Back at the research station, they found that the story had indeed spread far and wide. Journalists had begun arriving, seeking interviews about the miracle bear that had saved a human baby. Local tour guides were already offering expeditions to try to spot Luna and her cub. The Bennetts called an emergency meeting with the station staff and local community leaders. Thomas laid out their concerns bluntly, explaining the dangers that this newfound fame posed to Luna and the entire bear population in the region. "We need to control the narrative," he insisted, "and implement immediate protective measures for the area around her den." The discussion lasted hours, with various stakeholders raising valid concerns about tourism income, research opportunities, and conservation priorities. Finally, a local elder named Isabel, who had remained silent throughout, spoke up. "This bear chose compassion when nature would dictate otherwise," she said quietly. "Perhaps we should follow her example. Protect her not because of what she can bring us, money, fame, research, but because it is the right thing to do." Her words silenced the room. One by one, heads nodded in agreement. A plan was quickly formulated. The exact location of Luna's den would be kept confidential. The broader area would be designated as a special conservation zone with restricted access. Any research would be conducted with minimal disturbance. Most importantly, a local ranger team would be formed specifically to patrol against poachers who might target the now famous bear. As these protective measures were being implemented, Thomas made a personal request to return to the cave once more. Raphael agreed to guide him, though he questioned the wisdom of approaching the bear again. "I need to understand," Thomas explained, "and to thank her, as ridiculous as that might sound." Olivia insisted on joining them, bringing Noah safely strapped to her chest. "She should see that he's well," she said simply. The small group approached the limestone ridge cautiously. There had been no sign of Luna in the area for the past few days, and Thomas worried that the commotion following Noah's rescue might have driven her to abandon her den. When they reached the cave entrance, it appeared empty. Thomas felt a pang of disappointment, though he knew it was for the best if Luna had moved to a more secluded location away from human interference. They were about to turn back when a familiar huffing sound came from deeper within the cave. Slowly, Luna emerged from the shadows, her cub following close behind. She showed no aggression, merely curious watchfulness as she recognized the humans who had been there before. "We just came to say thank you," Thomas said softly, feeling slightly foolish talking to a bear, but compelled to express his gratitude nonetheless. Olivia stepped forward, carefully unwrapping Noah so that Luna could see him. The baby was alert and healthy, his cheeks pink with life. When he saw the bear, he made a happy gurgling sound and reached out with tiny hands. Luna approached slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. She sniffed the air, catching Noah's scent. Her cub, emboldened by its mother's calm, peeked around her massive form with evident curiosity. What happened next would be debated in scientific circles for years to come. Luna gently extended her muzzle toward Noah, not touching him, but coming close enough that the baby could reach out and pat her nose. The bear's eyes seemed to soften, and she made a rumbling sound deep in her chest that was neither a growl nor a threat, something closer to contentment. "She recognizes him," Raphael whispered in awe. The moment lasted only seconds before Luna backed away, guiding her cub deeper into the cave. But it was enough. A final connection between two mothers, two families, two species that should have been adversaries but had found something more profound. As they made their way back down the ridge, Olivia wiped tears from her eyes. "Do you think she understood? That we were thanking her?" Thomas looked back toward the cave one last time. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I do know that we've witnessed something that challenges everything we thought we knew about animal behavior and cognition. And that's a gift in itself." 6 months later, the Bennetts returned to the research station. Thomas had secured funding for a groundbreaking study on bear cognition and empathy, inspired by Luna's extraordinary behavior. Olivia had joined the project, contributing her expertise in local ecosystems and medicinal plants. The conservation zone around Luna's territory was flourishing, with local rangers proudly enforcing its boundaries. Isabel's wisdom had prevailed. The community had chosen to protect rather than exploit, finding greater value in preservation than in short-term gain. On their first day back, Thomas and Olivia hiked to a safe observation point overlooking a meadow where Luna and her now much larger cub had been spotted regularly. They set up their equipment with practiced efficiency, then settled in to wait. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the clearing, Luna emerged from the tree line. Her powerful form moved with the same grace they remembered, her cub now more independent but still staying close. The bears foraged peacefully, unaware or unconcerned by the distant observers. "Do you think she remembers?" Olivia whispered, adjusting Noah in his carrier. The baby was dozing, his little chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm that they no longer took for granted. Thomas watched the magnificent creature through his binoculars. "I like to think she does," he said softly. "Not as we would remember, perhaps, but in her own way." They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell. Two families connected by an extraordinary moment of compassion that had defied the natural order. The jungle around them hummed with life, reminding them of both its dangers and its wonders. And somewhere in that symphony of sound, they could almost hear the echo of a mother bear's gentle rumble, a sound that had once brought them all to tears, but now filled their hearts with gratitude and wonder. 2 years passed. The Bennetts had made the research station their permanent home, with Thomas directing an expanded conservation program and Olivia establishing a botanical laboratory focused on medicinal plants. Noah, now a sturdy toddler with wild curls and his mother's determined gaze, was growing up in an environment few children would ever experience. The Luna Project, as it had come to be known, had gained international recognition. What had begun as a simple study of bear cognition had evolved into a groundbreaking multidisciplinary effort that challenged fundamental assumptions about animal intelligence and empathy. Researchers from around the world applied to join the team, bringing expertise in everything from neuroscience to behavioral psychology. Luna and her cub, now nearly grown and nicknamed Soul by the local rangers, remained the stars of the project, though they were studied primarily through non-invasive methods like remote cameras and occasional distant observation. The conservation zone had expanded, creating a protected corridor that allowed the bears and other wildlife to range freely without human interference. On a crisp morning in the dry season, Thomas was reviewing footage from a remote camera when he noticed something troubling. Luna appeared thinner than usual, her movements lacking their characteristic fluid grace. Over several clips spanning a week, the change became more pronounced. She was limping slightly, favoring her right front paw. "She's injured," he told Olivia that evening, concern etched across his features. "Or ill. I can't tell from the footage." Olivia frowned, rocking Noah as he dozed against her shoulder. "Could it be something seasonal? Maybe she's just recovering from hibernation." "Andean bears don't fully hibernate like their northern cousins," Thomas reminded her. "And this doesn't look like normal weight fluctuation. Something's wrong." They consulted with Dr. Elena Vargas, the wildlife veterinarian who had joined the project the previous year. After viewing the footage, she confirmed Thomas's fears. "Her gait suggests pain, and the weight loss is concerning," Elena said grimly. "Without a closer examination, I can't diagnose the problem, but if it continues, her condition will deteriorate rapidly." "So what do we do?" Olivia asked. "We can't exactly invite her in for a checkup." Elena hesitated. "There is one option, but it's not without risk. We could tranquilize her for examination and treatment." Thomas shook his head immediately. Absolutely not. We established strict non-interference protocols for a reason. The stress alone could be less dangerous than whatever is causing her condition, Elena countered. Look, I understand the project philosophy, but we're not talking about interfering for research purposes. This is about potentially saving her life. The debate continued late into the night, with valid points on both sides. The team had worked tirelessly to establish trust with the local wildlife and community alike. Direct intervention could undermine that trust and set a problematic precedent. But could they really stand by and watch Luna suffer when they had the means to help? In the end, they agreed to increase monitoring while exploring less invasive options. Perhaps the injury would heal naturally. Perhaps the weight loss would stabilize. Perhaps. But 3 days later, the situation became dramatically worse. A local ranger radioed in an urgent report. Luna had collapsed near a stream less than 5 kilometers from the station. Sewell remained by her side, becoming increasingly agitated as his mother failed to respond to his distressed nudges. Thomas, Olivia, and Elena mobilized immediately. Noah was left in the care of Isabel, who had become something of a grandmother figure to the boy. The team loaded medical supplies, tranquilizers, and emergency equipment into their rugged vehicle and set off down the rough access road that led toward the stream. This changes everything, Elena stated firmly as they bounced over the uneven terrain. If she's collapsed, we intervene. No more debate. Thomas nodded grimly. The philosophy of non-interference seemed hollow when faced with the concrete reality of Luna's suffering. This bear had saved his son. How could he do any less for her? When they reached the end of the road, they continued on foot, following the ranger who had reported the sighting. The jungle was unusually quiet, as if holding its breath. Even the ever-present chorus of birds had dimmed to occasional calls. They found Luna lying on her side at the edge of the stream, her breathing labored and irregular. Sewell paced around her, occasionally nudging her massive form and making soft, distressed sounds. When he spotted the humans approaching, he rose up on his hind legs, a warning growl rumbling from his chest. "Easy," Elena murmured, readying the tranquilizer gun. "We just need to get past him to help her." Thomas stepped forward slowly, his hands visible. "He knows me, at least by scent. Let me try something before we tranquilize him too." "Thomas, be careful," Olivia pleaded, but her husband continued his careful approach. "Hey, Saul," Thomas said softly, using the bear's nickname. "Remember me? We're not here to hurt her. We want to help." To everyone's amazement, Sewell dropped back to all fours, his growl subsiding to a wary huff. He didn't retreat, but he no longer appeared poised to attack. It was as if he understood, or at least recognized, that these particular humans weren't threats. Elena wasted no time. With practiced efficiency, she prepared and administered the tranquilizer to Luna, then began her examination while the massive bear was still conscious but becoming drowsy. "There," she said suddenly, pointing to Luna's right front paw. "Do you see it?" Thomas and Olivia moved closer. Embedded deep in the pad of Luna's paw was a metal object, the unmistakable shape of a poacher's snare spike, cruelly designed to immobilize prey. The wound was inflamed and clearly infected, with angry red streaks extending up the limb. "Poachers," Thomas spat, his voice tight with anger. "This is deliberate." "Blood poisoning," Elena confirmed grimly. "The metal has rusted inside the wound. She's been suffering for weeks, based on the progression." "Can you help her?" Olivia asked, her eyes fixed on Luna's increasingly still form. Elena nodded, already unpacking her medical kit. "I'll remove the spike, clean the wound thoroughly and give her a massive dose of antibiotics. But she's very weak, and the infection is advanced. I can't make any promises." As Elena worked, Sewell remained nearby, watching with an almost human intensity. Thomas stayed close, speaking softly to both bears. Olivia coordinated with the ranger to report the poacher's trap and request additional security patrols in the area. "This wasn't an accident," the ranger, Miguel, said darkly. "That type of spike is designed specifically for large predators. Someone is targeting bears." "But why?" Olivia demanded. "The conservation zone is well established. The community supports it. The penalties for poaching are severe." Miguel shook his head. "Not everyone respects boundaries, Senora, and some believe that animals like Luna have special powers. Parts from such animals can fetch enormous prices in certain markets." The implication was clear and horrifying. Luna's fame as the miracle bear had made her a target. The very thing that made her special had put her in danger. By the time Elena finished her treatment, the sun was setting. Luna was stable but unconscious, her massive body now bandaged and pumped full of antibiotics. The team faced a difficult decision. "We can't leave her here," Elena stated. "She needs continued treatment and monitoring. If the infection hasn't responded to the antibiotics by morning, we may need to take more aggressive measures." "So we bring her back to the station?" Thomas asked, already calculating what that would require. "It's our best option," Elena confirmed. "We have the equipment there to treat her properly, and once she's recovered we can release her back to this area." Moving an unconscious adult Andean bear through the jungle required all their ingenuity and strength. They constructed a makeshift stretcher from branches and canvas, then carefully maneuvered Luna onto it. With 6 people, Thomas, 2 rangers, and 3 volunteers who had joined them, they managed to carry her through the darkening jungle toward the waiting vehicle. Sewell followed the entire way, maintaining a careful distance but never letting his mother out of his sight. When they reached the vehicle and loaded Luna into the specially prepared bed of the truck, the young bear became agitated, pacing and making distressed sounds. "He doesn't understand," Olivia said sadly. "He thinks we're taking her away forever." Thomas watched the bear's anxiety with growing concern. "We can't separate them. He needs to come too." "Are you serious?" Elena stared at him. "We can't just invite a wild bear to hop in the truck." "Watch me," Thomas replied, his mind made up. He approached Sewell slowly, speaking in the same calm, reassuring tone he had used earlier. Then, to everyone's astonishment, he lowered the truck's tailgate and patted the space beside Luna's unconscious form. "Come on, boy," he encouraged. "Stay with your mom." Olivia held her breath, certain her husband had finally lost his mind. But Sewell seemed to understand. After a moment's hesitation, the young bear heaved himself up into the truck bed, settling beside his mother with a huff that sounded almost like relief. "Unbelievable," Elena whispered as Thomas secured the tailgate. The drive back to the research station was tense but uneventful. Luna remained unconscious, her breathing shallow but steady. Sewell stayed pressed against her side, occasionally sniffing at the bandages but making no attempt to remove them. When they arrived, they found the entire staff waiting, alerted by Olivia's earlier calls. A temporary enclosure had been hastily prepared in one of the outbuildings, secure enough to contain the bears but comfortable enough to serve as a recovery space. As they transferred Luna into the enclosure, Sewell followed docilely, his focus entirely on his mother. Once inside, he circled the space, sniffing at the fresh straw bedding and water trough before settling beside Luna again, his massive head resting protectively over her neck. "I've never seen anything like it," Elena admitted as they secured the enclosure. It's as if he understands exactly what we're trying to do. Maybe he does, Thomas replied quietly. Maybe we've underestimated them all along. Throughout the night, the team took turns monitoring Luna's condition. Her fever remained high, but by dawn, there were encouraging signs. The inflammation around the wound had begun to subside, and her breathing had become more regular. When Noah woke that morning, his first question was about the bears. Despite their attempts to shield him from worry, the perceptive child had picked up on the urgency of the previous day's events. "Bear sick?" he asked, his small face scrunched with concern. "Yes, sweetheart," Olivia answered honestly. "Luna is sick, but Dr. Elena is helping her get better." "I help too," Noah declared with the absolute certainty of a 2-year-old. Olivia exchanged a look with Thomas. "Not this time, little one. Luna needs to rest, and—" "I help," Noah insisted, his lower lip jutting out stubbornly. "Luna, my friend." Thomas knelt beside his son. "She is your friend, Noah, that's true. But right now she's sleeping and taking medicine, like when you had that bad cough last month. Remember how you just wanted to sleep and have Mommy close by?" Noah considered this, then nodded solemnly. "Soul scared?" The question caught them both by surprise. Noah had never met Sewell, had only seen pictures of Luna's now-grown cub, yet somehow he had intuited the young bear's distress. "Yes, I think Sewell is worried about his mom," Thomas admitted, "but he's staying close to her, just like you stayed close to Mommy when you were sick." Noah nodded again, apparently satisfied with this parallel. Then he toddled over to his toy shelf and selected his favorite stuffed animal, a well-worn teddy bear that Isabel had given him. He brought it back and presented it to Thomas with grave ceremony. "For Sewell," he declared. "Make not scared." Olivia felt her eyes filling with tears. "Oh, Noah, that's very kind, but Sewell is a real bear, not like your Teddy. He might not understand." Noah's expression suggested he thought his mother was being particularly dense. He understand, like Luna understand baby Noah. Thomas and Olivia exchanged another look, this one filled with wonder at their son's simple wisdom. Who were they to say what a bear might or might not understand about compassion? Hadn't Luna herself defied all expectations? Later that morning, when Thomas went to check on the bears, he brought Noah's teddy with him. Elena had reported that Luna was showing improvement, becoming more alert and even taking some water. Sewell remained constantly by her side, vigilant and protective. Thomas approached the enclosure carefully, speaking softly to alert the bears to his presence. Sewell raised his head, watching warily but without aggression, as Thomas placed the small teddy bear just inside the enclosure door. "A gift from Noah," Thomas explained, feeling slightly foolish talking to a bear, but compelled by his son's certainty. "He thought you might need a friend too." He retreated, watching from a distance to see what would happen. Sewell approached the stuffed toy cautiously, sniffing it thoroughly before gently picking it up in his massive jaws. Thomas expected him to tear it apart or discard it. Instead, to his astonishment, the young bear carried it back to where Luna lay and placed it carefully beside her, then resumed his protective position. When Thomas related this to Olivia and Noah, the little boy simply nodded, as if this outcome had been entirely expected. "Sewell understand," he repeated confidently. Over the next several days, Luna's condition steadily improved. The infection responded to the antibiotics, her fever broke, and she began to eat small amounts of food. Sewell remained a constant presence, though he gradually relaxed enough to accept food from Elena and Thomas, taking it gently from their hands before returning to his mother's side. Word of Luna's plight spread quickly through the local community and beyond. Offers of support poured in. Donations for medical supplies, volunteers to help patrol against poachers, even children's drawings wishing Luna a speedy recovery. The miracle bear had become a symbol that transcended conservation. She represented something deeper about the possibility of compassion that crossed species boundaries. But amid this outpouring of goodwill, a more ominous development was unfolding. The poacher's spike that had injured Luna was identified as part of a sophisticated operation targeting protected species. Similar traps had been discovered in other parts of the conservation zone, suggesting an organized effort rather than opportunistic hunting. Miguel, working with regional authorities, traced the distinctive metalwork to a syndicate operating throughout South America, specialized in obtaining animal parts for black market traditional medicine. Luna, with her reputation for magical properties, would have been a particularly valuable target. "They'll try again," Miguel warned during an emergency meeting at the station. "Now that they know she's being treated here, they might become even more bold." The implications were serious. Not only were Luna and Sewell at risk, but the entire research station and its staff could become targets if the poachers were desperate enough. The remote location, once an advantage for undisturbed research, now made them vulnerable. Thomas proposed increased security, more patrols, surveillance cameras, perhaps even armed guards. Olivia worried about the militarization of what had been a peaceful scientific outpost. Others suggested relocating Luna and Sewell to a more secure facility, perhaps even a zoo where they could be protected. The debate grew heated until Isabel, who had remained characteristically quiet throughout, finally spoke. "You are all thinking like humans," she said softly. "What would Luna do? What would these bears choose if they could understand the choice?" Her question silenced the room. Thomas thought back to Luna's remarkable decision to save Noah, to the gentle way she had cared for a baby of a different species. What would she choose now? "They would choose freedom," he said finally, "but safety too, especially for her cub." "Then we must find a way to give them both," Isabel concluded. A new plan emerged from that meeting, one that respected both the bears' nature and their need for protection. As soon as Luna was strong enough, they would relocate both bears to a remote section of the conservation zone, far from known trails and access points. The location would be known only to a handful of trusted individuals. Remote monitoring would continue, but direct interaction would cease unless absolutely necessary for their well-being. In the meantime, security would be discreetly enhanced around the station, and a deliberate misinformation campaign would suggest that the bears had already been relocated to a wildlife sanctuary in another country. A week later, Luna was deemed strong enough for transportation. The wound had healed cleanly, and she was eating regularly and moving without obvious pain. The time had come to return her and Sewell to the wild. The chosen release site was a pristine valley deep within the protected zone, accessible only by helicopter due to the dense surrounding jungle. It featured a freshwater stream, abundant food sources, and natural caverns that could provide shelter, perfect bear habitat, far from human interference. The morning of the relocation, Thomas and Olivia brought Noah to say goodbye to the bears. They had explained as best they could that Luna and Sewell needed to return to their home in the forest, where they would be safe and happy. Noah had listened solemnly, then asked if he could give Luna a final gift. Now, standing outside the enclosure with his parents, Noah held a small leather pouch on a cord, one of Isabel's creations, filled with fragrant herbs from Olivia's garden. He had insisted on adding one of his own curls, carefully saved from his first haircut. "For protect," he explained seriously, "from bad people." Thomas took the pouch and promised to secure it around Luna's neck before she woke from the tranquilizer at the release site. Noah seemed satisfied with this, though his goodbye was tearful. "Luna, remember Noah?" he asked, his small voice wavering. "I think she will," Olivia assured him, holding him close. "Some friendships are too special to forget." The helicopter transport went smoothly. Luna, sedated for the journey, was carried on a reinforced stretcher, while Sewell, who had become surprisingly cooperative with the humans he now seemed to trust, was transported in a specialized cage, nervous but not panicked. At the valley, the team worked quickly to settle the bears in a suitable location near one of the caverns. Luna was placed on a soft bed of vegetation, the small protective pouch secured around her neck as promised. Sewell was released from his cage and immediately went to his mother's side, showing no interest in fleeing while she remained vulnerable. Thomas lingered as the others prepared for departure, watching the bears with a mixture of professional satisfaction and personal emotion. These animals had changed everything: his research, his understanding of interspecies relationships, even his family's entire life path. The debt he owed them could never be fully repaid. "Take care of her," he said softly to Sewell, who watched him with those intelligent eyes that seemed to understand far more than any bear should. "And take care of yourself." As the helicopter lifted off, Thomas looked back to see Sewell still standing guard over his recovering mother, a steadfast sentinel against an often harsh world. The image stayed with him long after the valley had disappeared from view, a reminder of the unexpected bonds that could form across the boundaries of species. 3 months later, the research station had settled into a new normal. Enhanced security measures had been integrated discreetly into daily operations. The misinformation campaign had apparently succeeded. Intelligence from Miguel's contacts suggested the poaching syndicate had moved on to other targets, believing the valuable Miracle Bear was now out of reach. Remote monitoring confirmed that Luna and Sewell were thriving in their new territory. Luna had fully recovered her strength, and trail cameras occasionally captured images of the two bears foraging, swimming, or simply resting together in the dappled sunlight of their protected valley. One such image had been framed and now hung in Noah's bedroom, a beautiful shot of Luna standing on a rocky outcrop, the morning sun gilding her fur, the small leather pouch still visible around her neck. Noah insisted on saying goodnight to his bears every evening, pressing his small hand against the glass as if reaching across the distance that separated them. On a crisp autumn morning, Thomas was reviewing data in his office when Olivia burst in, her expression a mixture of excitement and disbelief. "You need to see this," she said breathlessly, thrusting her tablet toward him. "From the North Ridge camera, captured an hour ago." Thomas took the device, expecting perhaps an interesting behavior observation or a particularly good shot of their ursine subjects. What he saw instead made him sit back in shock. The image showed Luna and Sewell at the edge of a small clearing. Between them walked two smaller bears, cubs, clearly only a few months old, their fuzzy forms unmistakable despite the distance. "She had babies," Olivia said unnecessarily, her voice filled with wonder. "Twins, from the look of it." Thomas studied the image, his scientific mind racing alongside his emotional response. This is unprecedented documentation. Cubs typically stay with their mother for up to 2 years, but Sewell is well past that age. Yet he's still with her. And now, apparently, helping with a new generation. "Family," Olivia said simply. "They formed a family unit beyond the typical mother-cub relationship, just like we did, but in their own way." Thomas nodded slowly, a smile spreading across his face. Luna's legacy. Not just survival against the odds, but a new kind of social structure. Adaptation. Evolution, perhaps. The implications for their research were profound, but in that moment, Thomas wasn't thinking as a scientist. He was thinking of a small leather pouch containing a child's curl, of a teddy bear offered in friendship, of boundaries crossed and connections forged that defied explanation, yet felt undeniably right. "Should we tell Noah?" Olivia asked, already knowing the answer. Thomas's smile widened. "Absolutely. He'll want to hear all about his bear family's new additions." That evening, as the jungle chorus swelled in the gathering dusk, Thomas and Olivia showed Noah the pictures of Luna's cubs. The little boy's face lit up with pure joy. "Baby bears," he exclaimed, clapping his hands. "Luna happy now." "Yes, sweetheart," Olivia agreed, hugging him close. "Luna is very happy." Noah studied the image intently, his small finger tracing the shapes of the bear family. Then he looked up at his parents with the serene confidence of a child who has seen the world prove his deepest beliefs correct. "See," he said simply. "Luna understand. Soul understand. Bears love like people love." Thomas and Olivia exchanged a glance over their son's head, recognizing the profound truth in his childish words. In the end, wasn't that what their research was really about? Not just behaviors and adaptations, but the deeper connections that bound all living things. The capacity for empathy, for protection, for love that transcended the boundaries of species? As Noah drifted off to sleep that night, the picture of Luna's growing family beside his bed, Thomas found himself thinking about the extraordinary chain of events that had brought them all to this point. A random accident, a bear's unexpected choice, a baby's survival against the odds, each link essential, each outcome uncertain until it unfolded. Life in the jungle was precarious. Nature was neither cruel nor kind, merely indifferent to the struggles of individual creatures. Yet somehow, within that indifference, moments of profound connection could emerge. Bear to human, mother to child, family to family. These connections defied scientific explanation, yet felt more real, more significant than anything that could be measured or quantified. In saving Noah, Luna had changed not only his fate, but the fate of an entire ecosystem. The conservation zone that protected her and her growing family now sheltered countless other species as well. The research flowing from Thomas and Olivia's work was reshaping understanding of animal cognition worldwide. And Noah himself, growing up with this remarkable story as part of his identity, would carry its lessons forward into a future where the boundaries between species might be viewed with greater humility and respect. As he closed Noah's door quietly, Thomas paused at the window that overlooked the darkened jungle. Somewhere out there, Luna and her family were settling into their nighttime routine, perhaps curled together in the safety of their cavern, the stars wheeling overhead just as they had for countless generations before. "Good night, old friend," he whispered to the darkness. "Thank you for everything." And though it was surely just his imagination, Thomas could have sworn he heard, carried on the night breeze, the soft, rumbling response of a mother bear, a sound that had once brought them all to tears, but now served as a gentle reminder of the extraordinary bonds that could form in the most unexpected circumstances, a sound of recognition, of connection, of understanding that transcended words, a sound of family. 5 years later, Noah Bennett sat cross-legged on a wooden observation platform high in the canopy, his sketchbook balanced on his knees. At 7 years old, he had his mother's thoughtful eyes and his father's patience. Today was special. His parents had finally deemed him old enough to accompany them to the remote viewing station that overlooked Luna's valley. "Stay very quiet," his father had reminded him for perhaps the 10th time that morning. We're guests in their home." Noah nodded solemnly. He understood the privilege being granted. For years, he had grown up hearing the story of how Luna had saved him as a baby, how she had defied every natural instinct to protect a human child. The story had shaped his young life, kindling a passion for wildlife that seemed bone-deep rather than learned. The valley below was lush with summer growth, the stream catching glints of afternoon sunlight. Noah's trained eyes, taught by both his parents and the indigenous guides who had become like extended family, scanned the foliage for movement. His father had told him they might not see the bears at all. Luna's family was thriving but elusive, rarely appearing during daylight hours. Just as Noah was beginning to lose hope, a movement at the valley's edge caught his attention. A large bear emerged from the tree line. Not Luna, but Sul, now a magnificent adult male who had defied all behavioral expectations by remaining with his mother's family group. Behind him trailed two adolescent bears, Luna's twins, nearly grown now, but still staying close to their unusual family unit. And then, like a dream materializing, Luna herself appeared, her form slightly grayer around the muzzle but still powerful, still commanding. Around her neck, barely visible through her thick fur, was the leather pouch Noah had given her years ago, somehow preserved through seasons of wind and rain and daily life in the wild. Noah held his breath, unwilling to make even the smallest sound that might disturb this moment. His parents, seated nearby, were equally still, their research equipment forgotten as they witnessed this rare family gathering. What happened next would remain etched in Noah's memory forever. Luna paused at the edge of the clearing, her head lifting as she tested the air currents. She turned, looking directly toward the observation platform, a vantage point that should have been invisible from her position, camouflaged as it was against the surrounding foliage. Yet somehow she knew they were there. The great bear rose up on her hind legs, a posture that would normally signal aggression or warning. But there was no threat in her stance. She simply stood, massive and magnificent, gazing toward them with an awareness that seemed impossible, yet undeniable. And then Luna made a sound, that same rumbling vocalization that had first broken Thomas's scientific certainty years ago. A sound that was neither a growl nor a call for her cubs, but something else entirely. Something that seemed impossibly like recognition. Tears sprang to Noah's eyes, though he couldn't have explained why. Beside him, his mother reached for his hand, her own cheeks wet with silent emotion. His father stood frozen, the binoculars lowered to his chest, his expression one of wonder untouched by years of scientific study. Luna remained upright for just moments longer, her gaze fixed on their hidden platform, before dropping back to all fours. With a gentle nudge to one of the younger bears, she led her family back into the protective cover of the forest, disappearing as silently as they had arrived. The platform remained silent for a long time afterward. What could be said in the face of such a moment? What words could capture the profound sense that something extraordinary had just occurred? A connection across species that defied explanation but demanded acknowledgement. Finally, Noah closed his sketchbook, having captured something of Luna's powerful form, but knowing the essence of the moment lived beyond what pencil could render. He looked up at his parents, his young face alight with the simple clarity that sometimes comes only to children. "She remembered," he said softly. "Luna remembered me." His mother squeezed his hand. "Yes," she whispered, "I believe she did." His father nodded, a lifetime of scientific training yielding to the undeniable evidence before him. "Some bonds," he said, his voice rough with emotion, "transcend everything we think we know." As they made their way down from the platform, the jungle humming with life around them, Noah felt a profound sense of rightness. As if pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known was incomplete had finally settled into place. Luna had saved him. His family had saved her. And together they had created something beautiful, a circle of compassion that had expanded to protect an entire ecosystem and reshape understanding of what was possible between species. The story would continue to unfold in ways none of them could predict. Luna's family would grow and change. The research Thomas and Olivia conducted would influence conservation efforts worldwide, and Noah would carry the memory of this day and the extraordinary bond it represented into a future where the boundaries between humans and animals might be viewed with greater wonder and respect. But in that moment, as the Bennett family walked hand in hand through the jungle that had become their home, what mattered wasn't the future, or even the remarkable past. What mattered was the simple truth that Luna had looked up, had seen them, had remembered, had chosen, once again, connection over distance, recognition over fear. A mother bear had once seen a human baby collapsed in the jungle, and what she did had put everyone in tears. But the tears that fell now were different, not of desperate relief, but of profound gratitude, not just for a life saved, but for a truth revealed. That love, in its purest form, knows no boundaries of species or language or time. That sometimes the most powerful bond of all is the one that forms in that sacred space where wild meets gentle, where instinct meets choice, where what should be impossible becomes beautifully, undeniably real.